The desert stretched for endless miles, glowing gold under the twin suns. Sandstorms had buried many secrets of the old world, but one relic had never stayed hidden for long. It was too massive, too strange, and too ancient to be forgotten. The people of the planet called it the Silent Relic. It was a ship, or at least it looked like one, half sunk into the desert rock. Its hull was dark metal, older than memory, carved with symbols no scholar could read. Generations of alien engineers had touched it, prayed to it, and tried to awaken it. But the relic never moved. Lyra stood before it again, the hot wind tugging at her silver cloak. Her people had grown up listening to stories of the relic. Some said it was cursed, others said it was waiting. Lyra herself did not know what to believe, but she had always felt drawn to it. Like the ship was whispering in silence, calling to her heart in a language beyond words. Today the relic would be tested again, not by her people but by outsiders. The humans had arrived 2 weeks ago, explorers from a faraway blue planet. They spoke strangely, moved with a boldness that unsettled the council, and asked questions no one dared to ask. Lyra had been assigned to watch them, to make sure they did not disrespect the relic. But when she saw one of them walk forward today, she felt something. Inside her twist, the human was tall, with weather-worn skin and sharp eyes that seemed to notice everything. His name was Ethan, a pilot from Earth. He was no priest, no scholar, no warrior. Yet he walked toward the relic like he belonged there. Lyra narrowed her eyes as the alien crowd muttered. "This is foolish," whispered one elder. "No outsider can succeed where we failed for centuries," another sneered. "Let him try, he will only prove our strength by failing." But Ethan did not seem to hear them. He kept his gaze locked on the silent ship, like it was waiting for him alone. Lyra's chest tightened. She told herself it was nonsense. The relic was part of her people's heritage, not his. But when Ethan placed his hand on the cold black metal, something strange happened. For the first time in living memory, the relic pulsed faintly with light. It was so dim most in the crowd thought it was a trick of the sun, but Lyra saw it clearly. Her breath caught, her heart raced, and her mind screamed that it was impossible. Ethan stepped back, looking puzzled but calm. He wiped the sweat from his brow and studied the markings on the hull. Lyra moved closer, her voice sharp. "What did you do?" Ethan turned his head. His voice even, nothing. Just touched it. But she knew he was lying, or maybe he did not even understand what he had done. That night the council gathered in the stone hall to argue. Some wanted the humans expelled, saying their presence was a danger. Others wanted to let Ethan try again, claiming the relic itself had chosen. Lyra sat in silence, her thoughts tangled. Her eyes kept remembering that faint glow, that impossible flicker of life. Why now, after centuries, had it reacted? Why to him, a human stranger? Later, as the suns sank and the stars filled the sky, Lyra walked back to the relic alone. The desert was cold now, the wind whispering softly through the dunes. She placed her hand where Ethan's had been. The metal was silent, dead and cold. She pressed harder, even whispered the old prayers her grandmother had taught her. Nothing. The relic ignored her as it had ignored all of them. A deep ache filled her chest, both sorrow and fear. She turned to leave. But a voice broke the silence. "You feel it too, don't you?" Lyra spun around. Ethan was there, standing in the shadows, his eyes reflecting starlight. For a moment she wanted to deny it, to accuse him of arrogance, but her voice betrayed, her soft and trembling. "It should not respond to you." Ethan gave a small smile, tired but steady. "Maybe it was never meant for you." Her throat tightened, her hands clenched. The words stung, not because they were cruel, but because they might be true. And if they were true, it meant her people had been waiting for the wrong hands all along. The thought terrified her, yet deep inside a spark of curiosity burned. What if the relic had not been waiting for aliens, not for priests, not for warriors, but for a human? As the night wind howled across the sand, Lyra realized her world was about to change. The silent relic was no longer silent, and the man who had woken it was not one of her people. He was something else entirely. A human. morning light spilled over the desert, painting the dunes with gold. The relic stood silent again, its black hull catching the glow of the rising suns. The faint pulse from the night before had vanished, leaving only questions and whispers, but the memory lingered in every mind. For the first time in living memory, the ancient ship had responded, and it had happened when a human touched it. Lyra stood near the council chamber, her silver eyes clouded with doubt. All around her, voices rose in anger and fear. Elders shouted that it was a trick. Warriors declared it an insult. Scholars argued that it meant destiny. The humans stood apart, silent under the weight of alien stares. Ethan was among them, calm and unreadable, his arms crossed as if he carried no fear. But Lyra knew this gathering was dangerous. The relic was sacred, and her people would not allow outsiders to claim it without a fight. The council leader, Elder Veros, lifted his hand, and the chamber fell into uneasy silence. His voice was deep and heavy with age. For centuries we have tried, and failed to awaken the relic. His eyes burned with suspicion as he looked at the humans. Now it stirs at the touch of an off-worlder. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Lyra felt her heart pound, afraid of what might come next. Veros's gaze sharpened. If the human believes he is chosen, then let him prove it. The chamber exploded with noise, shouts of anger, surprise, and excitement. Some demanded the human be sent away, others cheered for the test. Lyra clenched her fists, her voice whispering, "This will not end well." Ethan finally spoke, his voice steady. "What is the test?" The council leader smiled coldly. "Enter the relic, sit in the pilot's seat, and make it rise." A heavy silence followed. For years, hundreds had tried, warriors, priests, even machines. All had failed. Many had died, some crushed by the ship's defenses, others driven mad by its strange energy. To demand it of a human was cruel, but it was also a challenge no one could refuse. Lyra's stomach twisted. Part of her wanted Ethan to fail, to prove her people right, but another part, deeper and more secret, wanted him to succeed, because if he did, it meant there was more to the relic than her people ever understood. The following day, the test was prepared. Crowds gathered in the desert, thousands lining the dunes around the relic. The suns burned, high above banners fluttered, and the air was thick with expectation. Lyra stood close to the platform, her chest tight as she watched Ethan approach. He wore no armor, no weapon, only a simple flight suit. But his steps were strong, unshaken, as if the whispers of the crowd could not touch him. An alien warrior spat near his boots, sneering, "You will die inside, human." Ethan did not respond, his gaze fixed on the relic. Lyra felt her breath catch, remembering the faint glow from his touch. Her voice was soft, almost trembling. "You do not have to do this." Ethan looked at her, his eyes calm. "Yes, I do." The council leader raised his staff, his voice carrying across the desert. "Let the relic itself decide." The gates of the relic's hull opened with a low rumble, the sound vibrating through the sand. The dark passage yawned before. Ethan swallowing light like a hungry mouth. No one had ever come out with victory, but Ethan walked forward without hesitation. The gates closed behind him, sealing him inside. Inside, shadows stretched across endless walls of black metal. Symbols glowed faintly as Ethan passed, like they were waking from slumber. His hand brushed the surface and the hum of energy grew louder. Somewhere deep within, the pilot's chamber waited, a seat carved from the same dark alloy. It was shaped for no one alive, yet it seemed to welcome him. He lowered himself into the seat, his pulse racing. The chamber responded at once, lights blooming across the walls, symbols glowing like stars. Outside, the crowd gasped as the relic trembled. For the first time in centuries, the ship stirred. Under the twin suns, Lyra's heart pounded so hard it hurt. Her eyes locked on the glowing seams of the relic. Elders cried out in disbelief. Warriors clutched their weapons, scholars scribbled furiously on scrolls. The impossible was happening before them. Inside, Ethan gripped the armrests. The ship's voice whispered in his mind. Not in words, but in feelings. It was like touching a memory too old to name. He breathed deeply, closing his eyes. "Show me what you want." The relic responded, its power rising, the floor trembling beneath him. And then, with a sound like thunder, the ancient ship lifted. Sand swirled, wind screamed. The ground shook as the relic rose into the sky. The crowd below fell to their knees, some in worship, some in terror. Lyra's silver eyes widened, tears burning the corners. She could not deny it anymore. The relic had chosen him. Not her people, not their warriors, not their council. It had chosen a human. The desert roared with chaos as the relic rose. Sand whipped across the dunes, banners tore from their poles, and voices filled the air with fear and wonder. For centuries it had been nothing more than a silent monument. But now it was alive. Trembling with ancient power, the people dropped to their knees, some weeping, some shouting, others frozen in shock. Above them, the massive ship floated, dark metal glowing with streams of light that traced its hull like veins of fire. Lyra stood rooted to the ground, her heart pounding in her chest. She had dreamed all her life of seeing the relic awaken, yet she had never imagined it would happen like this. Not with one of her people at the controls, not with a priest or a warrior, but with a human outsider. The truth burned inside her, sharp and undeniable. The relic had chosen Ethan, and that truth was tearing her world apart. Inside the ship, Ethan gripped the seat as waves of energy surged through him. The chamber was alive, glowing brighter with every breath he took. Symbols flared across the walls, moving like rivers, rearranging themselves as if the ship was speaking. But he could not read them. He only felt them. It was as if the relic was not using words but emotions, guiding his thoughts, pushing him to act. Ethan whispered under his breath, "All right, show me." The seat shifted beneath him, molding to his shape. For the first time, it fit someone. Not perfectly, but enough. The controls lit up, panels opening, levers sliding into place. He placed his hands on them, and the ship seemed to sigh in relief. Outside, the alien crowd shouted louder as the relic tilted in the sky. Some screamed it was a curse, others cried out that it was destiny. The council leader, Elder Veros, stood rigid, his staff trembling in his hand, his voice carried heavy with fury. It is not his right. But his words were lost in the roar of the ship as it climbed higher. Lyra could not tear her eyes away, her chest rising and falling in panic and awe. Every part of her rebelled against what she was seeing. Yet another part, deeper and truer, whispered that it was meant to be. She had studied the old songs, the stories of the ancients, the whispers that said the relic was never of her people. Always she had ignored the darker verses, the ones that spoke of strangers from faraway stars. Now she understood. Those strangers were humans inside. Ethan felt the ship pulling him toward the stars. It was more than technology. It was alive, like a beast chained for centuries now stretching its wings. His hands moved across the glowing panels without thought, his instincts guiding him. The relic responded smoothly, as if it had been waiting for him to take control. The hum grew into a deep, powerful thrum, and the entire structure shuddered with eagerness. Suddenly a sharp voice cut into his mind, not his imagination, not his own thought, but something deeper. It was not words, but a command. Awaken. The word thundered inside him, echoing through his bones. Ethan gasped as light burst from the core of the chamber, flooding the halls of the ship. The relic was no longer half alive, it was fully awake. From the dunes, the people saw it blaze like a star. The black hull glowed with symbols of fire and silver, ancient runes dancing across its surface. Waves of energy rolled outward, making the sand ripple like water. Some aliens cried in terror. Others bowed their heads, afraid to look directly at it. Lyra raised her arm to shield her eyes, but she refused to look away. Her voice trembled. It is awake. Inside, Ethan's vision blurred as streams of memory not his own filled his mind. He saw worlds burning, fleets of ships soaring, alien cities collapsing under fire. He saw the creators of the relic, tall figures of light and shadow, their voices blending with thunder. And then he saw something stranger, something impossible. A human figure walking among them, standing beside their leaders, flying this very ship. Ethan's breath caught, his hands trembling. The relic had known humans before, long ago. The ship's voice returned, softer now, more like a whisper. You are the key. Ethan pressed his palm against the glowing panel, his jaw set. Then tell me where to go, the chamber answered with coordinates. Symbols spinning into a star map that hung in the air. Unknown stars, unknown paths, a trail leading somewhere far beyond this world. He did not know why, but he understood it was important. The relic tilted again, its engines roaring, the desert trembling under the power of its awakening. Outside, Lyra gasped as the ship turned, pointing toward the sky as if preparing to leave. The crowd panicked. Warriors raised weapons, though their shots would mean nothing against such power. Elder, Veyros shouted, bring it down, destroy it before it betrays us all. But no one moved. Fear chained their hands. The relic was awake, and nothing they did could stop it. Lyra's heart pounded as she whispered to herself, he is not betraying us. She did not know why she believed it, but she did. She knew. Ethan had not stolen the relic, he had answered it, and the relic had answered him back. The sky thundered as the ship climbed higher, glowing like a second sun. The desert people fell to their knees, their voices rising in prayer or cries of despair. Lyra's silver eyes burned with awe and terror as she whispered, the awakening has begun. And in the cockpit, Ethan gripped the controls, his voice steady despite the storm around him. Then let's finish what you started. The relic hovered above the desert, glowing like a star against the twin suns. Its engines roared with a sound that shook the bones of everyone watching. For centuries it had been silent, buried, forgotten, but now it was alive. Alive because of a human. Lyra's heart raced as she stared upward, the sight filling her with both fear and awe. The crowd behind her was still in chaos, some shouting that it was a curse, others falling to their knees in worship. Elder Veyros barked orders demanding the warriors prepare weapons, but no one moved. What weapon could harm something so ancient and powerful? The relic was beyond them. It always had been, and now it belonged to Ethan. Inside the cockpit, Ethan sat rigid in the pilot's seat. The ship hummed under his hands, responding to his thoughts as if it could read him. Lights pulsed across the panels, and the star map floated before his eyes. He did not fully understand it, but instinct guided him. He had been flying ships all his life, but this was different. This was not just a machine. It was alive. The ship tilted forward, and Ethan felt it pulling toward the sky. The controls were smooth, almost too smooth, like the relic had been waiting for him. He whispered, half to himself, half to the ship, let's see what you can do. At once the engines flared, and the relic shot upward, leaving a storm of sand and fire in its wake. Lyra stumbled back, the shockwave knocking her to the ground. Her cloak whipped around her as the crowd screamed, some running, some crying, others frozen in disbelief. She forced herself up, her silver eyes locked on the ship as it cut across the sky like a blade of light. She whispered, he's flying it. Her voice trembling with wonder. The words tasted impossible, yet they were true. A human was flying the relic. Inside, Ethan gritted his teeth as the ship soared higher. The controls adjusted themselves, forming around his hands, shaping to his movements. The star map blinked again, highlighting a cluster of distant coordinates. The ship wanted to go there. He could feel it. It was not just showing him. It was asking him, trust me. Its presence whispered in his mind. Ethan hesitated, then nodded. All right, let's go. The relic tilted sharply, engines howling, and then it broke free from the atmosphere. The desert world shrank below, the stars opening before him in endless black. For a moment, Ethan sat frozen, his chest tight, his breath short. He had flown many ships, but none had ever felt like this. It was like flying with his own heartbeat, his own breath. The relic and he were one. Back on the planet, the council chamber erupted into fury. Elder Veyros slammed his staff against the ground. He cannot be allowed to take it. Warriors demanded pursuit. Scholars argued in panic. Priests wept in silence. Lyra listened, her fists clenched, her heart torn. Part of her wanted to believe Veros, that Ethan was stealing their most sacred relic. But another part, deeper and stronger, whispered the truth. The relic had never been theirs. It had only been waiting. That night, as the desert winds howled over the empty dunes, Lyra stood alone where the relic had once rested. The sand still glowed faintly with its energy, the air still heavy with the memory of its flight. She closed her eyes, her voice soft. Why him? Why not us? But she already knew the answer. The relic had chosen, and its choice was clear. Far above, Ethan sat in the cockpit as stars streaked. Past, the ship carried him at a speed no human craft could match. He stared at the coordinates glowing before him, feeling the pull of something ancient and powerful. Every instinct screamed that this was the beginning of something bigger than himself. He thought of Lyra's face, the shock in her silver eyes, the fear and the awe. Would she ever forgive him for taking the relic? Or would she understand that it had been meant for him all along? The ship's voice whispered again in feelings rather than words. Loneliness, waiting, hope. It had been silent for centuries, alone in the sand. Now it was awake, and it was not alone anymore. Ethan leaned back, his voice steady. All right then, let's see where this leads. The relic surged forward, the stars stretching into rivers of light. Behind him, an entire world was left in shock, its people struggling to accept the impossible. And among them, one alien girl stood apart, her heart bound to the human who had done what no one else could. Lyra whispered into the cold night air, her words carried by the wind. The first flight has begun. The relic cut across the void, its engines a silent fire against the black canvas of space. Stars stretched before Ethan, rivers of light flowing past as the ship carried him faster than anything he had ever known. Every second felt unreal, as though he was riding not just a machine, but a living memory of something older than time. His hands rested on the glowing controls, and for the first time in his life, he felt like the universe itself was guiding him. The star map floated in front of him, shifting, rearranging, pointing to a cluster of stars far from any human chart. Ethan frowned. Where are you? Taking me? The relic responded with another surge of energy, symbols pulsing across the walls like a heartbeat. He could not read them, but he could feel them. It was not language, it was intent. Go there. It whispered in his thoughts. Go and see. Meanwhile, far below on the desert world, Lyra sat in the council chamber, her head bowed as voices clashed around her. Elder Veros shouted of betrayal, calling Ethan a thief, demanding that hunters be sent to capture or kill him. Priests spoke of omens, that the awakening of the relic was written. In the ancient songs, though none dared admit the truth of those songs, scholars scribbled furiously, debating what the runes might mean. But Lyra stayed silent, her heart caught between duty and truth. She could still see Ethan's face in her mind, calm, steady, unafraid, and she could still feel the sting of watching him rise into the sky, while her people were left behind. That night she returned to the dunes alone. The sand still held the heat of the relic's departure, glowing faintly under the twin moons. Lyra pressed her hand into the soil, whispering, "What did you see that we could not?" The wind gave no answer, but deep inside her heart whispered that the human was not stealing. He was chosen. In the cockpit, Ethan leaned forward as the star map shifted again. The relic slowed near a dead star system. Its planets shattered, its moons broken. The ship circled the ruins, scanning, and then it descended toward what was left of a small moon. Ethan squinted through the viewport, and his chest tightened. Structures dotted the surface, tall spires carved from the same black metal as the relic itself. Some were broken, fallen to the dust, but others still stood, glowing faintly as if waiting. Another graveyard, he muttered under his breath. The relic landed smoothly, its engines falling silent. The cockpit door slid open with a hiss, inviting him outside. Ethan hesitated, then grabbed his helmet and stepped onto the surface of the dead moon. The air was thin, cold, filled with silence. Before him stretched a city of ruins, alien yet familiar, like echoes of the ship itself. He walked among the spires, his boots crunching on black dust. Symbols glowed faintly on the walls, pulsing as he passed, reacting to his presence. It felt like walking into the memory of another world, a world long dead but not forgotten. At the heart of the ruins, he found a chamber, its entrance carved, with runes that blazed when he touched them. Inside, the walls lit up, showing visions in shimmering light. He saw fleets of ships, thousands of relics like the one he now piloted, soaring through galaxies. He saw their creators, tall beings, of light and shadow, their voices like thunder, their eyes burning with knowledge, and then he saw them fall, torn apart by an enemy cloaked in darkness, creatures of fire and hunger. The vision ended with the creators' last act, sending their relics across the stars, leaving them buried, waiting, hoping. Ethan staggered back, his mind spinning. He whispered. They weren't waiting for aliens like Lyra's people. The chamber's light shifted, showing an image that made his breath catch. It was not of the creators, but of humans, figures with familiar faces standing beside the ancient beings, flying their ships, fighting their wars. His voice cracked. We were there, weren't we? The chamber pulsed, confirming. Back on the desert world, Lyra studied the old scrolls, her fingers tracing the faded ink. Her people had always believed the relics were gifts left for them alone, but now she saw the lies hidden in the songs, verses about strangers from the stars, allies of the creators, beings who would one day return, humans. Her throat tightened as she whispered the forbidden words. It was never ours. In the ruins, Ethan stood before the vision as the relics. Voice filled his mind again. You are the key. You are the echo. You are the return. His hands trembled, his voice low. If I am the key, then what am I unlocking? The chamber gave no answer, only another map, another trail of stars, leading deeper into the unknown. Ethan returned to the ship, his jaw set, his heart heavy with the weight of what he had learned. The relic hummed as he took the seat again, its lights glowing brighter, eager to continue. He whispered, If this is my path, then I'll follow it. The engines roared and the relic lifted once more. Soaring into the stars behind him, the ruins sank back into silence, waiting for the next who dared to seek their secrets. And far away, Lyra raised her eyes to the night sky, her heart torn but her voice firm. Wherever you go, human, I will find you. The relic sailed through the endless dark, its engines burning silently against the stars. Ethan sat in the pilot's seat, his eyes fixed on the glowing map that stretched before him. Every pulse of light revealed a path, a trail left by the ancient creators, guiding him deeper into unknown space. Yet the weight of what he had seen in the ruins pressed heavy on his mind. Humans had been here before, long ago, fighting alongside beings who were now only shadows of history. And the enemy that had destroyed them was still out there, waiting. The relic trembled suddenly, a low growl of warning humming through its walls. Ethan straightened, his hands gripping the controls. What is it? He muttered. The panels lit up in red, symbols flashing sharp and urgent. Danger. The feeling pressed into his thoughts. Danger is near. His chest tightened, his instincts sharpened. Something was coming, something that had not been seen in centuries. Far away, on the desert world, Lyra woke in the middle of the night, her heart pounding. Dreams had torn through her sleep, visions of fire and screaming skies. She had seen Ethan in the cockpit, his face lit by flames, his hands locked on the relic's controls, and she had seen shadows, dark ships closing in around him. Her grandmother's voice echoed in her memory. When the relic awakens, so will the enemy. Lyra gripped her cloak and whispered, He is not ready. In the void, Ethan's eyes widened as the sensors flared. Shapes appeared on the edge of the starfield, dark silhouettes moving with silent hunger. At first he thought they were meteors, broken rocks drifting in the current of space. But then they shifted, turning in unison, their outlines sharp and jagged. Ships, but not like any he had ever seen. Their hulls were twisted, blackened, alive with flickering fire that burned without fuel. The relic's hum turned into a growl of pure rage. Ethan's skin prickled as the thought pressed into his mind. They have returned. The enemy fleet spread. Like a swarm, hundreds of ships closing fast. They did not send warnings. No words, no demands, only silence. Ethan felt the weight of their intent. Destruction, nothing more. His voice was steady, though his heart raced. Then let's see what you've got. He pushed the controls, and the relic answered with a roar, its engines flaring as it shot forward. The first volley came, streams of burning energy slashing across the black. Ethan rolled the ship, the relic moving like it was part of his body. The blasts missed by inches, exploding in sparks of light behind him. He pulled up sharply, diving into the swarm. The relic's weapons came alive, beams of silver fire tearing through the enemy ships. 3 burst apart instantly, their fragments swallowed by flame. But for every one destroyed, 10 more closed. Ethan gritted his teeth, his hands flying across the glowing panels. The relic responded faster than any craft he had flown, twisting, rolling, darting through the chaos. But the swarm was relentless. They moved like predators, cutting off, his path forcing him closer into their net. Too many, Ethan muttered, sweat stinging his eyes. The relic's voice pressed into him again, urgent, fierce, not alone. And then he understood. The relic was not asking him to fight like a human, but like something more. It showed him flashes of memory, ancient pilots battling the same enemy, their movements bold, reckless, unpredictable. They had not survived by playing safe. They had survived by daring. Ethan's jaw tightened. All right, then we'll do it your way. He cut the engines suddenly, the relic spinning into a dead drift. The swarm rushed past, overshooting him, their formation breaking for only a second. That second was enough. The relic flared back to life, its cannons blazing, ripping through their flank. 5 ships shattered. In a chain of fire, their wreckage scattering into the void. Ethan whooped, a fierce grin cutting across his face. Not bad, but the victory was short. The swarm regrouped, larger ships moving forward, their hulls glowing with deeper fire. The relic shuddered, the feeling of dread crawling into Ethan's mind. These were not just hunters, they were leaders, the ones who had destroyed the creators long ago, their weapons charged, their energy building like the heart of a storm. Ethan's breath came fast, but he held firm. He whispered to the relic, "If we're going down swinging." Back on the desert world, Lyra stood on the balcony of her home, her silver eyes fixed on the sky. She could not see the battle, but her heart knew it was happening. The stars seemed sharper tonight, glowing brighter, as if the universe itself was holding its breath. She pressed her hands together and whispered a prayer, not to the council, not to her people, but to the relic and the human within it. "Fight, Ethan," she murmured. "Do not let them win." In the black void, the enemy fired, waves of fire crashing toward him. Ethan pulled the relic into a dive, his body pressed hard against the seat. The ship screamed, not in fear but in fury, its engines blazing with ancient power. And then it struck back, its weapons unleashed in a storm of silver fire that lit the void brighter than a sun. The battle had begun, and for the first time in centuries the enemy had met resistance. The void burned with light and fire. The relic danced among the enemy swarm, silver beams tearing through the black ships as explosions rippled like dying stars. Ethan's hands moved fast, his instincts sharper than thought. Every roll, every dive flowing like he and the relic were one. Yet for every enemy destroyed, more appeared. Shadows swarming, hungry, relentless. The ship hummed around him, feeding him flashes of memory, showing him how the ancients once fought. But those pilots had been many, and he was only one. A blast struck the side of the relic, the cockpit shuddering, sparks bursting across the panels. Ethan gritted his teeth, forcing the ship to spin out of the line of fire. His heart hammered, his voice rough. "Not today." The relic growled back, its engines flaring as if sharing his rage. Another wave closed in. their weapons glowing with fire, their formation tightening like a net. Ethan felt the weight pressing down. For a moment he wondered if this was how it had ended for the ancients, but then a thought struck him. Humans did not fight like others. They did not rely only on power or tradition. They improvised. They risked. They turned the impossible into the possible. He smiled grimly. All right, let's give them something they don't expect. He killed the engines again, the relic going still, floating like a dead ship. The swarm surged forward, eager to crush him. And at the last second, Ethan ignited the engines in reverse, spinning the relic backward into the heart of their formation. The ship unleashed a storm of fire, beams slashing through the swarm at point-blank range. The enemy broke apart, their ranks scattering, burning, fragments spinning into the void. Cheers rose in Ethan's chest, fierce and wild. That's how humans fight. Far away on the desert world, Lyra stood beneath the twin moons, her silver eyes wet with tears. She could not see the battle, but she felt it, every pulse. Every scream of energy carried through her dreams and her blood. She whispered into the wind, "You are not one of us, yet you fight for us." Her voice cracked, "Please, survive." Back in the cockpit, Ethan's breath came heavy, sweat. Running down his brow, the relic pulsed with light, its voice pressing into his mind again. Softer this time. "You are the echo. You are the bond." He frowned, gripping the controls tighter. "Bond with what?" The ship answered. Not with words, but with feeling. It was not just choosing him. It was joining with him. Human instinct and ancient knowledge fusing together, creating something neither could be alone. The enemy leaders moved forward now, massive ships burning with black fire, their presence crushing. They were older, stronger, and filled with the hunger that had destroyed the ancients long ago. The relic shivered, but Ethan only narrowed his eyes, his voice firm. "We can do this," the ship responded, its power rising, its weapons glowing brighter than ever before. Together they surged forward, one mind, one will. The first leader fired. A beam of dark fire cutting through the void. Ethan rolled the relic aside, returning fire with a strike of pure silver light. The beam pierced the enemy's core, and the massive ship erupted into flame. The second leader screamed, its weapons tearing through space, but Ethan pushed harder. He pulled maneuvers no alien had ever dared, rolling the relic sideways through the heart of their fire, sliding beneath their cannons, and striking from below. The explosion shook the void, debris scattering across the stars. The swarm broke, apart, their unity shattered. The relic roared, its voice a wave of triumph in Ethan's mind, and then silence. The last enemy ship scattered into the black, vanishing like shadows retreating from dawn. Ethan sat in the cockpit, his chest heaving, his hands trembling. The relic glowed softly, its voice warm. "Together," he whispered back. "Yeah, together." On the desert world, the council watched the night sky, the stars flickering with distant fire. Elder Veros fell silent, his staff slipping from his hand. The people whispered among themselves, voices hushed with awe. The relic had not betrayed them. It had defended them, and it had done so with a human. Lyra stood apart, her silver eyes fixed on the heavens. Her heart ached, but it also soared. She knew her people would never see humans the same again. They were no longer strangers, no longer outsiders. They were part of the ancient bond, part of the story her people had forgotten. She whispered into the sky. "You are the connection, Ethan, between us and the stars." In the cockpit, Ethan leaned back, staring at the endless horizon of light. He had no idea what lay ahead, no idea how far the path of the relic would carry him. But he knew one truth. He was not alone. The relic had chosen him, and through him it had reawakened the bond between humanity and the stars. A bond stronger than fear, stronger than death, stronger than the enemy that waited in the dark. Ethan smiled faintly, his voice steady. "Let's finish what they started." The relic surged forward, engines blazing, carrying him into the unknown. The human connection had begun.